and replace old-fashioned values. Meanwhile,
dating blogger Gaynor Evans believes sex ed can only enhance a child's well-being when in school. Gaynor, I just want to start by asking you, because a lot of the language, the content that these kids are going to be taught is so graphic that we're not actually allowed to describe it pre-watershed. So how can something that can't be said pre-watershed to adults on the television be appropriate to be telling to our young people?
I must admit, I've read through the document, and I didn't know some of the words, so I was a bit confused myself. But I think these are words that they are familiar with. I mean, the fact that I didn't understand one or two of the words and had to look them up was quite sort of funny, really. But I just think that this is dialogue that they actually are using or coming across in their everyday lives. And if they don't understand it, at least if they've got the sort of somebody telling them what it is in an informed environment where they can ask questions freely and aren't embarrassed, I think it's important that they then know, because they may be these words might be totally inappropriately being used and they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know they were totally inappropriate. So I think knowledge is never a bad thing. It's just got to be given in the right environment, I would say.
Yeah, and maybe, Caroline Farrow, by the right people. I often think about this and say you're teaching geography one moment and then you're expected to talk about all sorts of intimacies the next. I don't think that does the teacher any favours or carries maybe the air of authenticity that it should. What do you think about who teaches it and how they teach it? Because when I was at school of the same religion as you, everything was in a moral framework. Now, I can't say that I emerged from school with anything. There was quite a lot of the morality stuck with me, but there wasn't anything about the science of everything else. So how do you, Caroline, are you totally against any sex education being taught, or how would you perceive it if you were a teacher? How would you perceive it being taught?
Well, this is the issue that is making a lot of lobby groups a lot of money that you identified, Eamon, because teachers rightly, specialist subject teachers, you're teaching French or teaching geography, whatever, of course they don't want to be teaching this and they feel very sort of disempowered. So, of course, what do we have to do? We have to pay the specialist lobby groups to come in because only they can deliver the training. Now, nobody is arguing, not even me, that children shouldn't be taught facts about reproduction, about their changing bodies, about contraception even. But it's impossible, really, whichever way you teach this, there's always going to be some sort of moral framework, whether that's from, say a Catholic or Christian perspective, or whether, even saying I'm going to teach this from an entirely neutral stance is still an ideological point of view. But actually what we're seeing is that children are being taught inappropriate material. Now, I disagree with what your other speaker says about these are words that children are using already. They're not. I know from my own children who are, exactly of this sort of age, that they're finding graphics. Fortunately, they don't have too much of it, but they don't want graphic sex ed. They hate sex ed lessons. They find them embarrassing, humiliating, and actually it's not giving children the information that they need to know that's appropriate to their age and stage. So nobody's saying don't tell children things. Of course, children need to learn about puberty. They need to know about their changing bodies, but there's a lot more beyond sort of mechanical sex acts. And this is what children are being taught, sort of, you do A to get B. And it's actually ruining children's chances of having a healthy sex life later, because it's clinicalizing everything. It's turning it into a sort of a mechanical act. It's really sort of de-eroticizing the whole process of sex in a way. And sex should be something that, two people in a loving, supportive relationship, perhaps learn about together, what you like and dislike, rather than this whole heap of expectation being placed on children that they can't contextualize. And, I think it really runs the risk as well of sexualizing children and making them write for exploitation and grooming. So, and I've heard of 11-year-olds being taught of the importance of postcoital hygiene, for example. And 11-year-olds told, you must always wash after sex. They don't need to know that. Likewise, girls and boys don't talk about specific acts.
Well, I just want to bring Gaynor back in. I mean, I don't know if I detected an eye roll there. A little bit of disagreement from you.
I think that, it's all very well to say that they would have their first sexual experience in a loving relationship, and it would all be very, sort of kind and nice. But sometimes the reality is that isn't what isn't actually what's happening out there. So I think sex can form all different forms of relationships. I think it can bond a relationship that's already established, but sometimes, especially in this young age group, and I don't know what age group you're talking about there, but with the sort of, whether it's the teenagers or the junior age, I know you can opt out of the junior. If you're a parent that doesn't want them to have this education, you can actually say that you don't want your child included in that.
Yeah, although you say that, I mean, there's been this high-profile case recently about a mother who was refused information about what her children were being taught. And I think most parents would see that as actually quite alarming. I'm not pretending that I know everything or I'm better qualified to teach it, but I think as the parent of that child under 18, I think I'd like to know what they're being taught. I certainly don't know a lot of this stuff, let me tell you.
Another thing as well,
the parents should be included.
So again, I was just going to say that I went to single-sex school. It was embarrassing then. If I was in a mixed school...
How mortifying, yeah.
I would think so. You did go to a mixed school?
I went to mixed school just for sixth form. I mean, well, that's a whole other debate, single-sex schools. I was a bit boy-mad because I'd been in a girls' school for ages. But anyway, but Gaynor, I mean, you think parents should be allowed to know, but why are they being denied this kind of information? Surely, if we believe in education, parents are entitled to be educated about what their children are learning as well.
There could be the what's the word I'm looking for? Politicization of a biological matter. That's the sort of thing, Caroline, that would get me.
Yeah, and this isn't new, okay? So in 2020, Warwickshire Council had to pull a programme which was teaching 6-year-olds about, how to sort of touch themselves. Sorry, I'm very aware of Ofcom. Yeah, in 2020... Warwickshire Council were forced to pull a very controversial programme called All About Me, which was teaching 6-year-olds about masturbation. And this is the problem, is that children are being really sexualised, they're being taught inappropriate material, and they're also being sort of radicalised with this gender ideology, the idea that sex is something that you can choose. They're being given very regressive ideas as well about, boys like this, girls like that. So if you don't fit into your sort of boy-girl label, then, maybe you've been born in the wrong body. And parents are really, really objecting to this. Nobody is saying that you shouldn't teach children things in an age-appropriate way, but actually parents need to take back the power. And also, I think this also shows that until this gets sorted out, there's a big government review going on about guidelines. We need to scrap sex ed in schools, and we need to reinstate the right of all parents to withdraw their children. Now, by scrap sex ed, I don't mean not teach children about reproduction.
It's scrapping it all together.
But actually, a lot of...
make a final point to Gaynor. I mean, I think we may not like the world we live in, but we are where we are. And I have a 5-year-old daughter. She came home from school talking about the Pantosaurus. They'd been taught about their underwear and who it was appropriate for them to see their pants. And now whenever we go to the beach, she's like, but they're going to see my... And I was so sad because suddenly there was a loss of innocence and that we had to teach our children this. But then I thought, well, I'd rather she knew that actually, her pants are just private parts, and this is not... But it's a horrible world sometimes that we live in, but, knowledge is power, isn't it, Gaynor?
That's what I think, knowledge is power. I do agree the parents should be brought into this. It should be a guided thing. When the child expresses a need to know something, the question should be answered. But unfortunately, not all children develop at the same age and the same level. And my only concern with this is that you might have a very emotionally immature child and a mature child, and this could miss both of them in this. If we decide not to do it, or if we decide to give them too much information, it might not be right for the more emotionally immature child. So it's a difficult one, which only parents can help with, I think, in that case.
Gaynor, thanks for your take on things. Caroline, thank you very much indeed. You've opened the debate up there. People get in touch. You know how to do it. gbviews@gbnews.com. Please let us know what you think.
Stay with us. We're going to be discussing the scrapped mortgage relief fund.